When I was a kid, I lived with my grandma for a while, and her house was an extremely weird place. The house was dome-shaped and had some very absurd architectural designs. A 15-foot deep hole in the backyard, a staircase leading down to nowhere, the house flooding for no reason. The whole place just had a surreal vibe. This house was right outside the Navajo reservation, in a very isolated part of New Mexico, though we did have two neighbors who had built ranches up there recently, super rich old people. My grandma's place was built sometime in the 19th century. According to my grandma, it was originally built to treat tuberculosis patients when TB was really bad in New Mexico. I was pretty young, but I'll never forget what I saw up there. The shower had a small round window that looked into the living room. I thought that was cool as I would wave to my grandma while showering, but I quickly became afraid of it. One day, me and my grandma were playing cards in the living room, and a large handprint appeared on the shower window. I pointed to it, and this freaked even my grandma out, who promptly got up and saged the place. This couldn't have been my handprint, as I was a little kid, and this handprint was huge and lanky. My second experience. The house had an upstairs level, but it only covered half of the ceiling. Think of an indoor balcony. This is where me and my grandma would sleep, as the bathroom was the only actual room in the house. One night, I had a dream that an invisible force had picked me up and thrown me off the upstairs level, which was a big fear of mine. I woke up before I hit the ground, and guess where I was? Laying on the first floor, underneath the edge of the upstairs level. It would have been a pretty big fall, but I had no pain. Another experience. I was out in the backyard playing, and our swing started swinging very fast and violently. There was no wind, and my grandma's horses became extremely spooked before this even started happening, and they were trying to escape their pen. I had countless other paranormal experiences there, but these were the ones that stood out to me, and I wanted to keep this post short. I'm 27, husband is 30, daughter is 1. The story happened last night, so I'm running off of like 2 hours of sleep, and my daughter wasn't into the idea of sleeping in this morning. Also, I don't know if this is the place for this kind of thing, but I've been searching through Facebook and Reddit for some sort of group to talk about this. I need ideas on what to do. We can't move out at the moment. Or any rational explanation. Okay, let's dive into this mess. So to start, my husband, our 1-year-old, and myself live in a rental and have been here for 3 years now. When we first moved in, there was a random doorbell that would go off. There isn't a doorbell here that we can see. We thought that there was probably a battery-powered doorbell stored in the attic that was probably dying or malfunctioning. That eventually stopped, and we forgot about it for the most part. My husband also used to see what he called shadow people, hear footsteps, and have horrible sleep paralysis dreams. I always chalked it up to his mind playing tricks on him, or him trying to scare me. It's been a few years since any of that has happened, though, and for the year that our daughters lived with us, 0 spooky things have happened until last night. My husband works the night shift, so it's just me and the baby most nights. Well, last night, my daughter wakes up around midnight, so I get her and bring her to my bed. She is back asleep and I'm wide awake scrolling through Hulu. As I'm searching for a show to watch, I kid you not, the foot of my bed, frame and all, lifts like half a foot off the ground and slams back down. My daughter is still asleep, but I'm frozen in fear. My first thought is, there's someone under my bed, but I quickly realized that I couldn't even fit under our bed, so that's far-fetched and not any better. I quickly scoop my daughter up football style, stand on my bed, and jump off the bed as far as possible and run out of the room. I grab our gun, call my husband shaking and sobbing to please come home, then call my mom to come pick us up. We're a one-vehicle family. At that point, our kitchen lights start to dim until they were completely off, which was the last straw. I took my daughter and went to the front yard in only a t-shirt and panties until my husband got home. About 10 minutes. He did a sweep of the house and nothing seemed out of place, which weirdly only made me feel more scared, like I would rather a stranger be under my bed than some invisible force. But I still went to my mom's. I finally fell asleep around 3:30, and my husband picked us up at 5 a.m. when he got off work. I'm afraid to sleep here, so I've been awake ever since. I don't know how I'm going to be here alone at night anymore. I'm trying to debunk what happened and find an explanation, but I can't. It may not sound scary to you, but I never felt so scared in my life, and scary stuff is 10 times worse when you have a baby to protect. What do I do? How do I bless my house correctly without making this worse? Also, I don't drink or do any drugs, so it's not like I was just tripping. My mom is a paranormal buff, and my husband and I agreed, after one too many crappy spouses and scary movies, to always believe each other when we say something is up. So they both believe me, but I still feel crazy. This happened about 10 years ago, when my children were younger and my husband worked permanent night shift. I'd put the kids to bed, and I'd been watching some TV for a few hours when I decided it was time to hit the sack. I went and checked on the kids and went to the bathroom to brush my teeth and wash my face before bed. My bathroom then was pretty tiny. We've since moved houses, and the mirror above the sink reflected the door in the corner of the bathroom next to the door. I set about brushing my teeth and having a wash. I was finishing washing my face, and when I was toweling my face off, I looked in the mirror, and I saw a girl staring back at me. She looked to be in her teens and stood slouched in the corner wall of the bathroom, looking back at me in the mirror. She was making direct eye contact, and she wasn't smiling. Just nothing behind the eyes. No emotion, nothing. She had long, scruffy, dirty-looking curly blonde hair, and she was wearing a long, plain pale pink t-shirt, and she had dark circles under her eyes, like she hadn't slept for a week. I spun around, and there was nobody there. I looked back in the mirror, and there was nothing there. I was a bit freaked out, and I ran quick to check on my kids, and decided to move them into my bedroom. Nothing else happened that night, and I never saw that girl again, although we did have other paranormal stuff happen during the time we lived in that house. One night, the entirety of my family, plus my dad's girlfriend, was in the cemetery at around 7:30 to 8 p.m. It was a cold fall evening, and the moon was full. My dad had been joking around with myself and my 3 siblings, talking about how 8 p.m. is the witching hour. As we walked along in the cemetery, we saw a bright beam of light, as if a car had its headlights on in the cemetery. But there was no car, and within the light, a deer was standing on top of this hill staring at us. As soon as we looked to the right of the deer, along the woodline of a forest, we saw an apparition of a 1920s-looking man running down the hill. No noise, completely silent, and within seconds it vanished. Immediately I pulled out my phone to call my mom, and it was 8:02 p.m. And keep in mind it's fall, so there were leaves and sticks all on the ground, but not one of us heard a single crack. To test if we all saw the same thing, we told my dad's girlfriend what we all saw individually, so no one could overhear what we were telling her. and when she went to speak to my dad, she said we all described the exact same thing. To this day, we still talk about this encounter because it was incredibly unreal and frightening. In Hanscom Air Force Base, Massachusetts, which is located in Lexington, there is the inn on base, and I had to stay there for about a week. The room that I stayed in had a bedroom as well as a living room. The night that stands out to me is one where I was sitting in the bedroom on the bed, and I'd just gotten done sending a text. I put my phone on the nightstand and started to get comfy. As I was laying on my side, I felt paralyzed. I couldn't move my body. I'm not sure how else to explain it. I felt a very heavy presence in the room, starting from the doorway to the side of the bed I was on. I felt the bed sink in. No joke. I literally felt it sink in, as if a human being was sitting on my bedside. And I saw a Caucasian woman that looked to be about in her 50s, wearing a black dress with a white embroidered collar. Her hair was put up nicely, almost fancy. She wore a hat that sat high on her head and was square on top, almost like a graduation cap. She sat with her back facing me, but she slowly turned her head, allowing me to see only her profile. Her presence was so unbelievably powerful and heavy. I've encountered other presents in my life, and this one was within the top 3 of feeling whatever evil is. I don't know why, but I remembered feeling like she wanted me to know that she was in charge, or something of that sort. I felt like I couldn't breathe, couldn't move or scream. When her presence left, I didn't see her get up from the bed. I immediately shot up, turned all the lights on, and went to the living room area to stay awake for the rest of the night. This is one of 2 locations on Hanscom Air Force Base that I've experienced spirits. I'll share the other one in another post. It would be cool to see if anyone else that's been there has had any similar experiences of their own. When I was 8 and my brother was 9, we moved with my mom to a very small town after our parents split up. The new house was 2 stories with 3 bedrooms and a den. There was a large bedroom on the main floor with a full bathroom and a small den at the front of the house. The master was upstairs along with another room that was entirely purple, paint, carpet, and drapes. So my brother immediately claimed the big room on the main floor with the bathroom, and I was stuck in the purple nightmare. When we were moving in, we noticed a lock on the door to my brother's room, but it was odd because it locked from the outside with a key. We eventually found the key in the cellar. My mom just brushed it off. The room also only had one window, close to the ceiling, that was long but not wide and didn't open. So it let light in, but you really couldn't see out unless you stood on something. The other 2 bedrooms both had regular locks on the doors that locked from the inside. There was an attic at the top of the stairs that also had a lock on the outside, so we didn't think much of it. We all went to bed that first night, and I don't remember anything too off myself, just new house strangeness. My brother the next morning said the light in his bathroom was flickering, water running, toilet flushing, and he was a bit freaked out. My mom checked the room and everything seemed fine in the daylight. He decided to stick it out. We explored the house that day, found the key to the door and odd leftovers from previous people in the cellar and attic. The attic was right beside my room, and I was a bit spooked by it, but I'm sure that was just me being 8. The next night, after we all went to bed, I woke up to my brother screaming at the top of his voice, "Mom, help me, please, stop, help," from downstairs. I got there first because my room was closest, but my mom was right behind me. He was in his bed, thrashing, and looked like he was basically having a fit. When I got closer to his bed, He literally jumped out of it, crying and staring at his bed. He said he felt something on his chest holding him down, and what felt like thumbs being pressed into his eyes, and a voice whispering, "Die out, die out, die out," in his ear. We couldn't see anything in the room, but my brother was adamant that he was not going to stay in there. My mom was trying to cheer him up, and said he could sleep in her room. My brother and I were halfway up the stairs, which were across from the room, and he asked her to please shut the door. I've never seen him so spooked. She laughed and said okay and went back to close the door, and even made a joke about being able to lock the door now and did just that. As she started up the stairs towards us, we heard a loud knocking on the door coming from the inside. Needless to say, my brother and I screamed bloody murder and ran for my mom's bedroom with her close behind. He moved into the small den the next day. He just couldn't sleep in there, so we turned it into a rec room and had our couch and TV in there instead. He had no issues in there. We never slept in that room, but anyone that came to stay with us said they would be woken up by activity in the bathroom or catch glimpses of something, but no one ever felt what my brother did, thankfully. We only lived there for about a year and a half. It's been 30 years now, and I've always wondered who or what was kept locked in that room and why. I'm an 18-year-old male and I live in Italy, in a very small town, 500 to 700 people, in the middle of the countryside in the Po Valley. I was always a weird kid and didn't have any friends. I was also very reckless and I loved doing adrenaline-pumping things. Back when I was 12 or 13 years old, I used to sneak out of my home in the late evening. My parents were still out for work and my grandma was too old to control me, and I'd go walking around in the small paths between the fields, just for the scary feeling that it gave me being alone in the dark. I knew the area like the back of my hand, and I had a pocket knife with me, so I felt somewhat safe. One time I went further than the other times, and the little earthy trails started becoming small gravelly roads, but I continued walking until I saw a crossroad. There were others in the area, smaller, but those ones scared me too much. Then I saw a man dressed elegantly with a cylinder, riding a black horse coming from the left. I've never seen a horse in my town before, and I knew for a fact no one rode horses there either. The man looked at me, then turned his head back forward and stopped near a brick pillar. Watched him for a bit, and then I started watching around me to see if there wasn't anybody else. And when I looked back, the horseman was completely vanished, so I ran back home. That night I couldn't sleep, because I thought I saw the horseman watching me from my window. I went back later to where I saw the man, but I never saw him again, and everything seemed normal. After a couple of weeks, I had a sleep paralysis. Not my first and not my last, but that time there was the same horseman from the crossroads in my room, watching me, and he was getting closer till I felt the horse breathing on my face, and I could smell him. I went back about a week ago to search the crossroads, because I remembered this story, but I didn't find anything, just other fields. I hope because someone built over it, and not because it was some kind of nightmarish place.